Hello everybody! Today we're looking at the Kohler Archer self-rimming sink. This is the model K-2356-1. So it's got one hole and it's in white. To open up the box, and this is what was inside. Kind of see it's got the model number molded in. It's nice and solid from this side. The reason I got this is it's really about the largest self-rimming sink you can get. And to replace the hole for my old sink, this is about the only thing that was large enough to do it. Let's take a look on the other side. Okay, here's flipped it over. Looks very nice, beautiful white finish. See where it says Kohler right there. And quite heavy. I think the shipping weight on it is 35 pounds. It's not light. To sink a little bit more detail, I'm disappointed it didn't come with a template to cut it out, but I tell you, I mean, there's a lot of extra leeway. You can see we have like almost 2 inches along this side, several inches here, and like I say, a lot of room here. So for a self-rimming sink, this thing looks like it can cover almost any size hole without any trouble. And you know, it's not like you have to get the cut exact, or if your existing hole is an odd shape, this thing should get you covered. Here's my old sink, and you can kind of see it's got some cracks in it. These faucets don't work very well. It's kind of got an old style 8-inch offset hole pattern, which you can still buy faucets for, but I wanted to go for more modern single hole. So we just got to get this thing out of here. I already turned off the water at the wall, and I'm going to take some tools. It's just glued down there with silicone rubber, so I'm just going to separate all the way around the edge with a mallet and some scrapers until this thing comes free. Okay, breaking the seal along here, you know, the caulking came off pretty easy. Now we got to disconnect some stuff underneath here. Got to disconnect this pipe going down up here to the P-trap. Then we got to disconnect the 2 water lines. And I see something awful in here. I got a multi-turn valve, which I hate, and it's got a hard fixed copper line coming out of there. And that's all got to be replaced. So I've got some new quarter-turn valves, so I'm going to turn off the water and replace these valves. Okay, just to show you where I'm at, I turned off the water main at the inlet to the house, took off the 2 faucets, and you can kind of see they got a little compression fitting here and a compression fitting here. So now I got myself some new quarter-turn valves. And of course, these things are always confusing. Let's see, this one says it's for 1/2-inch pipe. Well, sometimes they say 5/8 OD, but that's the same thing. I've always gotten confused. Go, why is one? What's the other? What do I need? And then 1/2-inch and 5/8 are the same size. And you can see it's got the compression fitting in here. But usually what I do is I just throw those away and just reuse the old one and just screw these things back on, and it's always worked really well for me. Okay, all finished. And one thing I've learned over the years on these stupid compression fittings is you got to crank these things down tightly, super tightly, or else they'll leak. And I also put a little caulking all the way around on the inside. You can see a little bit of white caulking there, just a little bit of caulking to help make sure these things don't leak. Like I say, you've got to crank them down tightly and then make sure it doesn't leak. Okay, I've had the water in for about an hour, making sure that there's no leaks coming out of these valves. And so now I took some rough measurements on the new sink, and it looks like I'm going to have to cut a little notch out here, a little notch out here, perhaps just a little bit of a notch there, and perhaps just a little bit of a notch there, just to get the sink to fit in there, because it's rectangular, not hexagonal. If you can kind of look here, you can see there's tile, and then there's like a a ½ inch worth of concrete, and then they have a nice thick piece of plywood underneath there. So we got a couple different ideas here. I just happen to have a angle grinder with a diamond blade on it, and this thing just shreds tile and concrete like you wouldn't believe. This thing would tear right through it. And once I get the concrete off, then I'll have to get the wood. And of course, I got a saber saw for the wood. And then, you know, perhaps if you have like one of these oscillatory tools, you can see there's a diamond grip thing here, and that possibly would get through it, but I'm sure it'd be a lot slower than the 4½ inch angle grinder with the diamond blade. You can get these things pretty cheap at Harbor Freight. Yeah, the saw just cut through here. I take a chisel, and this thing just kind of comes up as well, there's still a piece of metal in there I got to break through, but basically it comes off as just one big piece. So then now I just got to cut the wood away. I took a saber saw and cut away the rest of the wood, and hopefully if my measurements are correct, it's going to fit. Okay, so far everything's looking so good. I do see a potential issue. In this particular installation, the previous builder glued all these things in there, so there's no in-out adjustment here. So the only adjustment I have is I can rotate this around a little bit, but I just gotta hope that somehow it gets to the bottom of the sink, or else I'm gonna have to do some replacing. Okay, now I'm going to put in the drain. And here we've got our drain pieces right here. Now the directions say to put this piece of rubber on there, stick this baby in. Well, you know, first then put a big bead of silicone around the edge and put this thing in there, and then tighten it down in the back with these 3 pieces. And I've done that before, and it's just not worked out very well. These stupid rubber gaskets have never worked out well for me. Now the real way you're supposed to do it is you use plumber's putty. So what you do is you make like a little snake of plumber's putty, put it all the way around in here, and then tighten it in the back with these items right here. And that's always worked so much better for me than these stinky little rubber gaskets. What happens is the gasket on this sink, it comes in as such a V in here that the gasket doesn't even make contact. So the gasket's just a big waste of space. On other sinks, it's flatter. And then you have the gasket on here, and then when you tighten this thing down there's a little gap between the sink and the metal, and it looks kind of funny, and you get dirt in there. And like I said, I've just never had any good luck with the gasket, so the gasket's getting thrown away, and I'm using good old plumber's putty. Okay, you can see I put a nice thing of plumber's putty. You don't really need too much plumber's putty because it all gets squeezed out, and you'll end up just wiping it away anyway. So now it's time to put the thing in there, and then as I tighten down the nut, it's going to get all squeezed out nice and flat. So I tighten up the nut on the back side really well, and you just wipe up all the plumber's putty that comes out. The next step is installing the faucet. Okay, now that everything is all firmly tight, we got a few more little items. We got this baby, the drain body. You can see there's a little O-ring there. And of course we got the lift rod that has to go in, and I got the lever that makes it go up and down, the stopper itself. So we can see we took the spring clip and put it in here, got it like in mid position, and we pull up. It's a good, we get it for a good distance. We adjust this and pick the right hole to where this kind of goes up to a reasonable amount, and now it's all the way down. Down. Well, now it's time to glue the sink down. You can see I took off the P-trap so that wouldn't get in the way. I'll put that on after the sink's all glued in. And here, it's really important when you're doing a bathroom that you get stuff that is for kitchen and plumbing, because it has mold and mildew fighters in there. There's other kinds of silicone that don't have that. So you definitely want to have the mold and mildew stuff. I got the most expensive stuff they had. Put a bead all the way around the edge. And then in here I put a bead all the way around the inner edge, just to make sure that no water is going to leak through. Okay, Well, I got everything glued down, turned on the water. Faucet works really well. Seems to save water. Very nice. Having to use 2 taps was a real drag. I'm sure glad I got a single handled faucet. And there's no leaks. And I'll check again tomorrow and keep you apprised. The only thing I have left to do now is the glue still has to harden. The silicone rubber still has to harden. And then I'm going to put a bead of silicone all the way around the edge. And then it'll be all done. An addendum, I opened up the second sink. And it came with installation instructions and a full-size template. And of course, that's a much larger hole than the one I did, but anyway, it does have instructions, although who really reads those things?